Can social scientists contribute to our understanding of the crisis of the American financial system that broke into the open in 2008 and has since turned into an economic and fiscal crisis of global dimension? I will argue that the present crisis can be fully understood only when considered as a stage in an ongoing evolution and transformation of that very particular social formation that we call democratic capitalism. Democratic capitalism came into the world, came to be more or less safely established only after the Second World War in the western part of the world, where it functioned extraordinarily well for the next two to three decades. So well, in fact, that this period, which was one of uninterrupted economic growth, still dominates our ideas and expectations of what modern capitalism is or should and could be. This is true in spite of the fact that, looked at with hindsight and in the light of the turbulences that followed, the quarter century immediately after the war should without difficulty be recognizable as truly exceptional. Indeed, I suggest that it is not the Trente Glorieuses, but the series of crises that followed that is representative of the normal condition of democratic capitalism. That condition, I maintain, is governed by an endemic and essentially irreconcilable conflict between capitalist markets and democratic politics. A conflict that, having been temporarily suspended for the historically short period immediately after the war, forcefully reasserted itself when high economic growth came to an end in the 19th century. In the 4 decades since the end of postwar growth, the epicenter of the tectonic tension inside the political economy of democratic capitalism has migrated from one institutional location to the next, in the course giving rise to a sequence of different, although generically related economic disturbances. In the 1970s, the conflict between democratic claims for social justice and capitalist demands for distribution by marginal productivity played itself out primarily in national labor markets, where trade union wage pressure and the politically guaranteed full employment caused accelerating inflation. When what was in effect redistribution by debasement of the currency became economically unsustainable, forcing governments under high political risk to put an end to it, the conflict re-emerged in the electoral arena. Here it gave rise to a growing disparity between public spending and public revenues, and as a consequence, to rapidly rising public debt in response to voter demands for benefits and services in excess of what a democratic capitalist economy could be made to hand over to its tax state, as Schumpeter, in a memorable article, has called it already in 1918. He sort of saw this problem on the horizon. Just as inflation, conflict management by deficit spending could not continue indefinitely. To secure social peace, however, efforts to rein in public debt when they became unavoidable had to be accompanied by financial deregulation, easing access to private credit as an alternative route to accommodating normatively popular and politically powerful demands of citizens for security and prosperity. As we know, this too lasted not much longer than a decade, until the global economy almost faltered under the burden of the unrealistic promises of future payment for present consumption and investment licensed by governments as compensation for fiscal austerity. Since then, the clash between popular ideas of social justice and economic insistence on market justice has once again changed sides, this time migrating to international capital markets and the complex contexts currently taking place between financial institutions, electorates, governments, states, and international organizations. Now the issue is how far the states can and must go in enforcing on their citizens the property rights and profit expectations of what refers to itself as the market, so as to save themselves, the states, from bankruptcy without losing what may still have remained of their democratic legitimacy. Toleration of inflation, acceptance of public debt, and deregulation of private credit were no more than temporary stopgaps for government confronted with the apparently irrepressible conflict between the two contradictory principles of allocation under democratic capitalism, social rights and marginal productivity, as determined by the relationship between supply and demand. Each of the three worked for a while until they began to cause more problems than they solved, indicating that a lasting reconciliation of social and economic stability, or to quote another famous British sociologist, or of social integration and system integration in capitalist democracies, is no more than a utopian project. Eventually, all that governments were able to achieve in dealing with the crises of the day was to make them assume new forms and reappear in new places. In fact, there is no reason to believe that the contradictions inherent in democratic capitalism, with their successive manifestation in ever new varieties of economic disorder, should today have come to an end.